All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.
Hope everyone's doing good today.
Recording by Keith.
Let me break some smoke up real quick.
The Alchemist by H.P. Lovecraft. High up, crowning the grassy summit of a swelling mount whose sides are wooded near the base with the gnarled trees of a primeval forest, stands the old chateau of my ancestors. For centuries, its lofty battlements have frowned down upon the wild and rugged countryside about, serving as a home and stronghold for the proud houses whose honored line is older even than moss-grown castle walls. These ancient turrets, stained by the storms of generations and crumbling under the slow yet mighty pressure of time, formed in the ages of feudalism one of the most dreaded and formidable fortresses in all France. From its mocky-collated parapet,
Hey, Dilga, how you doing?
barons, counts, and even kings
Hope you're doing good.
Yet never has its spacious hall resounded to the footsteps of the invader. But since those glorious years, all has changed. A poverty but little above the level of dire want, together with a pride of name that forbids its alleviation by the pursuits of commercial life, have prevented the scions of our line from maintaining their estates.
Thanks for stopping by.
And the falling stone of the walls, the overgrown vegetation of the parks, the dry and dusty moat.
Not much. Just visiting a friend of mine up in Michigan. How you been doing?
And the faded tapestries within all tell a gloomy tale of fallen grandeur. As the ages passed, first one, then another of the four great turrets were left a ruin.
Yeah, I just moved around in the room. Cause I usually was sitting over that way on the comfy chair. Yeah, I'm in Michigan right now too. That's why I'm out of my room.
Within these walls and amongst the dark and shadowy forests, the wild ravines and grottos of the hillside below were spent the first years of my troubled life. My parents I never knew. My father had been
Now I get on a quick little live.
A month before I was born.
See how it does.
By the ball of a stone, somehow dislodged from one of the.
Because I know everyone got Mother's Day plans probably, so.
Died at my birth. My care and education devolved solely upon one remaining servitor, an old and trusted man of considerable intelligence, whose name I remember as Pierre. I was an only child.
Yeah, shit.
Companionship, which
for another work season, huh? Hell yeah.
Strange care exercised by my aged guardian in excluding me from the society of the peasant children whose abodes were scattered here and there upon the plains that surround the base of the hill. At the time, Pierre said that this restriction was imposed upon me because my noble birth placed me above association with such plebeian company. Now I know its real object was to keep from my ears the idle tales of the dread curse upon our line that were nightly told and magnified by the simple tenantry as they conversed in their hushed accents in the glow of their cottage hearths.
Yeah, shit, that's crazy for that long of a period. I guess it wouldn't be too bad if you're, as long as it was getting paid good money.
It was perhaps an effect of such surroundings that my mind early acquired a shade of melancholy. Those studies and pursuit which partake of the dark and occult in nature most strongly claimed my attention. Of my own race, I was permitted to learn singularly little, yet what small knowledge of it I was able to gain seemed to depress me much. Perhaps it was at first only the manifest reluctance of my old preceptor to discuss with me my paternal ancestry that gave rise to the terror which I ever felt at the mention of my great house. Yet as I grew out of childhood, I was able to piece together disconnected fragments of discourse, let it slip from the unwilling tongue which had begun to falter in approaching senility, and had a sort of relation to a certain circumstance which I had always deemed strange, but which now became dimly terrible. The circumstances to which I allude is the early age at which all the counts of my line met their end. Whilst I had hitherto considered this but a natural tribute of a family of short-lived men, I afterwards pondered long on the premature deaths, and began to connect them with the wanderings of the old man, who often spoke of a curse which for centuries had prevented the lives of the holders of my title from much exceeding the span of 32 years.
All right, that's always part that sucks is, especially you had to find work and not being there.
At this time, my belief in the supernatural was firm and deep-seated, else I would have dismissed with scorn the incredible narrative unfolded before my eyes. The paper carried me back to the days of the 13th century, when the old castle in which I sat had been a feared and impregnable fortress. It told of a certain ancient man who had once dwelled on our estates, a person of no small accomplishments, though little above the rank of peasant. By name, Michael, usually designated by a surname of Malvais the Evil, on account of his sinister reputation. He had studied beyond the custom of his time, seeking such things as the philosopher's stone or the elixir of eternal life, and was reputed wise in the terrible secrets of black magic and alchemy. Michael Malvais had one son named Charles, a youth as proficient as himself in the hidden arts, who had therefore become called Le Sorcerer, or the Wizard. This pair, shunned by all, were suspected of the most hideous practices.
That's definitely a decent money now for nowadays.
Many small peasant children was laid at the dreaded door of these two. Yet through the dark natures of the father and son ran one seemingly ray of humanity. The old man loved his offspring with fierce intensity, whilst the youth had for his parent a more than filial affection. One night, the castle on the hill was thrown into the wildest confusion by the vanishment of a young Godfrey, son to Henry, the Count. A searching party, headed by the French father, invaded the cottage of the sorcerers, and there came upon old Michael Malvais, busy over a huge and violently bouldering cauldron. Without certain cause, in the ungoverned madness of fury and despair, the Count laid hands on the aged wizard, and ere he released his murderous hold, his victim was no more. Meanwhile, joyful servants were proclaiming the finding of young God, telling too late that poor Michael had been killed in vain. As the Count and his associates turned away from the alchemist, the form of the sorcerer appeared through the trees. The excited chatter of menials standing about told him what had occurred, yet he seemed at first unmoved at his father's fate. Then, slowly advancing to meet the Count, he pronounced in dull yet terrible accents the curse that ever afterward haunted the house of C. May never a noble of thy murderous line survive to reach a greater age than thine, spoke he, when suddenly leaping backwards into the black woods, he drew from his tunic a phial of colorless liquid, which he threw into the faces of his father's slayer as he disappeared behind the inky curtain of the night. The Count died without utterance and was buried the next day, but little more than 32 years from the hour of his birth. No trace of the assassin could be found, though relentless bands of peasants scoured the neighboring meadowlands around the hill. Thus time and the want.
It's an H.P. Lovecraft book and see which one it is. It's The Alchemist by H.P. Lovecraft. That falls under public domain. Give me 1 second, everyone.
But when, years afterwards, the next young Count, Robert by name, was found dead in a nearby field of no apparent cause, the peasants told in whispers that their seigneur had but lately passed his 32nd birthday when surprised by early death. Louis, son to Robert, was found drowned in the moat at the same fateful age, and thus down through the centuries ran the ominous chronicle, Henris, Robert, Antonius, and Armand, snatched from happy and virtuous lives when little below the age of their unfortunate ancestor at his murder. That I had left at most but 11 years of further existence was made certain to me by the words which I had read. My life previously held its small value, now became dearer to me each day, as I delved deeper and deeper into the mysteries of the hidden world of black magic. Isolated as I was, modern science had produced no impression upon me, and I labored, as in the Middle Ages, as wrapped as had been old Michael and young Charles themselves, in the acquisition of demonological and alchemical learning. Yet read as I might, in no manner could I account for the strange curse upon my line. In unusually rational moments, I would even go so far as to seek a natural explanation, attributing the early deaths of my ancestors to the sinister Charles Le Sorcier and his heirs. Yet, having found upon careful inquiry that there were no known descendants of the alchemist, I would fall back to occult studies, and once more endeavor to find a spell that would release my house from its terrible burden. Upon one thing I was absolutely resolved. I should never wed, for, since no other branch of was in existence, I had to end the curse with myself. As I drew near the age of 30, old Pierre was called to the land beyond.
They had to go check upstairs. The dog was barking. I'm at the house by myself right now. My buddy Cameron and his wife and kid are out doing the family thing for Mother's Day, and I didn't want to be in the way for all that, so I stay behind, and plus, they could go do a little hiking, and my back's hurting me real bad today, so I didn't want to be a drag during that, so I stay behind and let them go do their family thing. Hey, Caucasian Sasquatch, how you doing, bro?
Cobwebs in profusion never before seen by me were spun everywhere, and huge bats flapped their bony and uncanny wings on all sides of the otherwise untenanted gloom. Of my exact age, even down to days and hours, I kept a most careful record, for each movement of the pendulum of the massive clock in the library told off so much of my doomed existence. I approached that time which I had my ancestors Henry at his end. I was ever for the coming of unknown death. In what strange form the curse
Excuse me.
I knew not, but I was resolved at least that it should not find me a passive victim. With new vigor, I applied myself to my examination of the old chateau and its contents. It was upon one of the longest of all my excursions of discovery in a deserted portion of the castle, less than a week before that fatal hour which I felt must mark the utmost limit of my stay on earth, beyond which I could not even the slightest hope of continuing to draw breath. Came upon the culminating
it's
whole life.
the app is called Livervox. Let me see if I can find it real quick for you.
One of the most dilapidated and ancient turrets. As the afternoon progressed, I saw the lower levels descending into what appeared to be either a medieval place of confinement or a more recently excavated storehouse for gunpowder.
See if I can get a better picture. Turn the brightness down a little bit.
The last staircase, the paving became very damp, and soon I saw by the light of my flickering torch that a blank, water-stained wall impeded my journey.
That's the name of the app, and it's a bunch of free books that fall in the public domain, and it has a lot of Lovecraft, Dickens, Sam Stoker, Charles Dickens, H.G. Wells. But it definitely has a lot of it's The Alchemist by H.P. Lovecraft. But yeah, they're all free. Those ones are all free, and they all fall under the public domain.
Dripping with the moisture of the lake and stoutly resisting all my attempts to open it.
Yeah, they have a lot of them on YouTube, but they actually have a Livervox app you can download to your phone, your tablet. You can play it that way.
My immediate sensations were incapable of analysis. To be confronted in a place as thoroughly deserted as I had deemed the old castle with evidence of the presence of man or spirit produced in my brain a horror of the most acute description. When at last I turned and faced the seat of the sound, my eyes must have started from their orbits at the sight that they beheld.
Yeah, it might be there.
In the ancient Gothic doorway stood a human figure. That of a man clad in a skull cap and long medieval tunic of a dark color.
I have this one, and I also have my Audible account. Try to fix this a little bit.
His cheeks deep sunken and heavily.
My Audible I pay for, it's monthly sub, but you get a free credit every month, and that's pretty much how I got all my books on Audible. I do.
His figure, lean to proportions of a skeleton, was strangely bent and almost lost within the volumes of folds of his particular garment. But strangest of all were his eyes. Twin caves of abysmal blackness, profound in expression of understanding, yet inhuman in degree of wickedness. These were now fixed upon me, piercing my soul with their hatred, and rooting me to the spot whereon I stood. At last the figure spoke in a rumbling voice that chilled me through with its dull hollowness and latent malevolence. The language in which the discourse was clothed was that debased form of Latin in use amongst the more learned men of the Middle Ages, and made familiar to me by my prolonged researches into the works of the old alchemists and demonologists. The apparition spoke of the curse which had hovered over my house, told me of the coming end, dwelt on the wrong perpetuated by my ancestor against old Michael Malveus, and gloated over the revenge of He told me how young Charles had escaped into the night, returning in after years to kill Godfrey the heir with an arrow just as he approached the age which had been his father's at his assassination. How he had secretly returned to the estate and established himself unknown in the even then deserted subterranean chamber whose doorway now framed the hideous narrator. how he had seized Robert, son of Godfrey, in a field, forced poison down his throat, and then left him to die at the age of 32, thus maintaining the foul provisions of his vengeful curse. At this point, I was left to imagine the solution of the greatest mystery of all, how the curse had been fulfilled since that time when Charles Le Sorcier must in the course of nature have died, for the man digressed into an account of the deep alchemical studies of two wizards, father and son, speaking most particularly of the researches of Charles Le Sorcier concerning the elixir which should grant him who partook of it an eternal life. And his enthusiasm had seemed for the moment to remove from his terrible eyes the black malevolence that had first so haunted me. But suddenly the fiendish glare returned, and with a shocking sound like the hissing of a serpent, the stranger raised a glass vial with the evident intent of ending my life, as had Charles de Sorcier 600 years before ended that of my ancestor. Prompted by some preserving instinct of self-defense, I broke through the spell that had hitherto held me immovable, and flung my now dying torch at the creature who menaced my existence. I heard the file break harmlessly against the stones of the passage as the tunic of the strange man caught fire and lit the horrid scene with a ghastly radiance. The shriek of fright and impotent malice emanated by the would-be assassin proved too much for my already shaken nerves, and I fell prone upon the slimy floor in a total faint. When at last my senses returned, all was frightfully dark, and my mind, remembering what had occurred, shrank from the idea of beholding any more. Yet curiosity overmastered all. Who, I asked myself, was the man of evil, and how come he within the castle walls? Why should he seek to avenge the death of Michael Malveus, and how had the curse been carried on through all these long centuries since the time of Charles Le Sorcier? The dread of years was not, for I knew that he whom I had felled was the source of all my danger from the curse, and now I was free. I burned with desire to learn more of the sinister thing which had haunted my line for centuries, and made of my own youth one long continued nightmare. Determined upon further exploration, I felt my pockets for lint and steel, and lit the unused torch which I had with me. First of all, new light revealed the distorted and blackened form of the mysterious stranger. The hideous eyes were now closed. Disliking the sight, I turned away and entered the chamber beyond the Gothic door. Here I found what seemed much like an alchemist's laboratory. In one corner was an immense pile of shining yellow metal that sparkled gorgeously in the light of the torch. It may have been gold, but I did not pause to examine it, for I was strangely affected by that which I had undergone. At the farthest end of the apartment was an opening leading out into one of the many wild ravines of the dark hillside forest. Filled with wonder, yet now realizing how the man had obtained access to the chateau, I proceeded to return. I had intended to pass by the remains of the stranger with averted face, but as I approached the body, I seemed to hear, emanating from it, a faint sound, as though life were not yet wholly extinct. Aghast, I turned to examine the charred and shriveled figure on the floor. Then, all at once, the horrible eyes, blacker even than the clear face, in which they were opened wide with an expression which I was unable to interpret. The cracked lips framed words I could not well understand. Once I caught the name of Charles Le Sorcier, and again I fancied the words years.
Click the link in the description to sign up for a free
And curse issued from the twisted mouth. Still, I was at a loss to gather the purport of his disconnected speech. I was in ignorance of his meaning. Pitchy eyes once more flashed malevolently at me, until, helpless as I saw my opponent to be, I trembled as I watched him. Suddenly, the wretch, animated with strength, raised his pitched
something like that.
Sunken pavement. Then, as I remained paralyzed with fear, he found his voice, and his dying breath screamed forth those words which have ever afterwards haunted my days.
I'm just not very good at shows like that.
Can you not guess my secret? Have you no brain whereby you may recognize the will which has through 6 long centuries fulfilled the dreadful curse upon the house? Have I not told you the great elixir of eternal life? Know you not how the secret of alchemy was solved? I tell you, it is I have lived for 600 years to maintain my revenge, for I am Charles Le Sorcier. End of The Alchemist. Recording by Keith Worrell. Please visit my webpage at www.nakedpenguins.org.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Scott Carpenter. The Beast in the Cave by H.P. Lovecraft. The horrible conclusion which had been gradually intruding itself upon my confused and reluctant mind was now an awful certainty. I was lost, completely, hopelessly lost in the vast and labyrinthine recess of the Mammoth Cave. Turn as I might, in no direction could my straining vision seize on any object capable of serving as a guidepost to set me on the outward path. That never more should I behold the blessed light of day, or scan the pleasant hills and dales of the beautiful world outside, my reason could no longer entertain the slightest unbelief. Hope had departed. Yet, indoctrinated as I was by a life of philosophical study, I derived no small measure of satisfaction from my unimpassioned demeanor.
Oh, yeah.
For although I had frequently read of the wild frenzies into which were thrown the victims of similar situations,
I had to talk with most hated when I get back home.
but stood quiet as soon as I clearly realized.
Well, as soon as I
the loss
get
of my
back home.
Nor did the thought that I had probably wandered beyond the utmost limits of an ordinary search cause me to abandon my composure even for a moment. If I must die, I reflected, then was this terrible yet majestic cavern as welcome a sepulchre as that which any churchyard might afford, a conception which carried with it more of tranquillity than of despair. Starving would prove my ultimate fate, of this I was certain. Some, I knew, had gone mad under circumstances such as these, but I felt that this end would not be mine. My disaster was the result of no fault save my own, since unknown to the guide I had separated myself from the regular party of sightseers, and wandering for over an hour in forbidden avenues of the cave, had found myself unable to trace the devious windings which I had pursued since forsaking my companions. Already my torch had begun to expire. Soon I would be enveloped by the total and almost palpable blackness of the bowels of the earth. As I stood in the waning, unsteady light, I idly wondered over the exact circumstances of my coming end. I remembered the accounts which I had heard of the colony of consumptives who take their residence in this gigantic grotto to find health from the apparently salubrious air of the underground world, with its steady, uniform temperature, pure air, and peaceful quiet, had found instead death in strange and ghastly form.
I have to try to do that before I leave that Sasquatch.
And had wondered what unnatural influence a long sojourn in this immense and silent cavern.
Yeah, the guy,
as healthy and vigorous as I.
the only thing I have to smoke outside is joints, because I guess the way it gets real smoky with joints. Because I'm being Michigan until I'm able to get a ticket to get back home.
No possible means of escape neglected. So, summoning all the powers possessed by my lungs, I set up a series of loud shoutings, in the vain hope of attracting the attention of the guide by my clamor. Yet as I called, I believed in my heart that my cries were to no purpose, and that my voice, magnified and reflected by the numberless ramparts of the black maze about me, fell upon no ears save my own. All at once, however, my attention was fixed with a start as I fancied that I heard the sound of soft approaching steps on the rocky floor of the cavern. Was my deliverance about to be accomplished so soon? Had then all my horrible apprehensions been for naught? And was the guide, having marked my unwarranted absence from the party, following my course and seeking me out in this limestone labyrinth?
Yeah, pretty much.
These joyful queries
because my older brother, because we were on the way back from our, it was me, older brother, and my mom. We're on the way back from Casper, because we went up there to for our my cousin's wedding. And my brother, since it was close by, my friends, where he's staying at in Michigan, went to Colorado. He bought me a one-way ticket. So I'm here to
Besides, when I listened carefully, I seemed to trace falls of 4 instead of 2 feet.
get
I
the
was now
ticket bought.
convinced that I had, by my own cries, aroused and attracted some wild beast, perhaps a mountain lion, which had accidentally strayed within the cave. Perhaps, I considered, the Almighty had chosen for me a swifter and more merciful death than that of hunger. Yet the instinct of self-preservation, never wholly dormant, was stirred in my breast, and though escape from the oncoming peril might but spare me for a sterner and more lingering end, I determined nevertheless to part with my life at as high a price as I could command. Strange as it may seem, my mind conceived of no intent on the part of the visitor save that of
But I don't mind it.
Accordingly, I became very quiet.
Able to visit with my friend, which I haven't seen in a couple of years, which it's hard visiting him just because how far out he lives from me.
Hope was not destined for
Yep.
realization, for the strange footfalls steadily advanced. The
You
animal
know,
evidently having obtained
the universe is
which in an
somehow
atmosphere so absolutely
find a way
free
to
from all
provide some
disturbing
help for me.
influences as is that of the cave, could doubtless be followed at great distance. Seeing, therefore, that I must be armed for defense against an uncanny and unseen attack in the dark, I grouped about me the largest of the fragments of rock which were strewn upon all parts of the floor of the cavern in the vicinity, and grasping one in each hand for immediate use, awaited with resignation the inevitable result.
All my traveling like full-time basis, I just
pattering of the paws drew near. Certainly the conduct of the creature was exceedingly strange. Most of the time,
visiting my
the tread
friend.
seemed to be
He's
that of a quadruped.
right now I'm in Michigan, but I'm in Upper Michigan. I'm up in the UP area, not too far from our Canadian border.
It must, I thought, be some unfortunate beast who had paid for its curiosity to investigate one of the entrances of the fearful grotto, with a lifelong confinement in its interminable recesses. It doubtless obtained a
right, that's pretty much how I live my life. Is
and rats of the cave, as well as some
day at a time, from day to day.
Every freshet of the great river, which communicates in some occult manner with the waters of the cave. I occupied my terrible vigil with grotesque conjectures of what alteration cave life might have wrought in the physical structure of the beast, remembering the awful appearances ascribed by local tradition to the consumptives who had died after long residence in the cave. Then I remembered with a start that, even should I succeed in felling my antagonist, I should never behold its form, as my torch had long since been extinct, and I was entirely unprovided with matches. The tension on my brain now became frightful. My disordered fancy conjured up hideous and fearsome shapes from the sinister darkness that surrounded me, and that actually seemed to press upon my body. Nearer the dreadful footfalls approached. It seemed that I must give vent to a piercing scream, yet had I been sufficiently irresolute to attempt such a thing, my voice could scarce have responded. I was petrified, rooted to the spot. I doubted if my right arm would allow me to hurl its missile at the oncoming thing, when the crucial moment should arrive. Now the steady pat-pat of the steps was close at hand, now very close. I could hear the labored breathing of the animal, and terror-struck as I was, I realized that it must have come from a considerable distance, and was correspondingly fatigued. Suddenly the spell broke. My right hand, guided by my ever-trustworthy sense of hearing, threw with full force the sharp-angled bit of limestone which it contained, toward that point in the darkness from which emanated the breathing.
Oh, damn, that's crazy.
Wonderful to relate, it nearly reached its goal, for I heard the thing jump, landing at a distance away, where it seemed to pause. Having readjusted my aim, I discharged my second missile, this time most effectively, for with a flood of joy I listened as the creature fell in what sounded like a complete collapse, and evidently remained prone and unmoving. Almost
to get back home, it's going to cost me a little bit more than that.
I reeled back against the wall. The breathing continued in heavy gasping inhalations and expirations, whence I realized that I had no more than wounded the creature, and now all desire to examine the thing ceased. At last something allied to groundless superstitious fear had entered my brain, and I did not approach the body, nor did I continue to cast stones at it in order to complete the extinction of its life. Instead, I ran at full speed in what was, as nearly as I could estimate in my frenzied condition, the direction from which I had come. Suddenly I heard a sound, or rather a regular succession of sounds. In another instant they had resolved themselves into a series of sharp metallic clicks. This time there was no doubt. It was the guide. And then I shouted, yelled, screamed, even shrieked with joy, as I beheld in the vaulted arches above the faint and glimmering effulgence which I knew to be the reflected light of an approaching torch. I ran to meet the flare, and before I could completely understand what had occurred, was lying upon the ground at the feet of the guide, embracing his boots and gibbering despite my boasted reserve in a most meaningless and idiotic manner, pouring out my terrible story and at the same time overwhelming my auditor with protestations of gratitude. At length I awoke to something like my normal consciousness. The guide had noted my absence upon the arrival of the party at the entrance of the cave, and had, from his own intuitive sense of direction, proceeded to make a thorough canvass of by-passages just ahead of where he had last spoken to me, locating my whereabouts after a quest of about 4 hours. By the time he had
Have a nice one rolled up for when they get back from their little hiking trip.
Upon the strange beast which I had wounded but a short distance back in the darkness, and suggested that we ascertain by the flashlight's aid what manner of creature was my victim. Accordingly, I retraced my steps, this time with a courage born of companionship, to the scene of my terrible experience. Soon we descried a white object upon the floor, an object whiter even than the gleaming limestone itself. Cautiously advancing, we gave vent to a simultaneous ejaculation of wonderment. For of all the unnatural monsters either of us had in our lifetimes beheld, this was in surpassing degree the strangest. It appeared to be an anthropoid ape of large proportions, escaped perhaps from some itinerant menagerie. Its hair was snow white, a thing due no doubt to the bleaching action of a long existence within the inky confines of the cave. But it was also surprisingly thin, being indeed largely absent save on the head, where it was of such length and abundance that it fell over the shoulders in considerable profusion.
Even getting a ticket don't really bother me that much. It's, if it happens, it happens.
The limbs was very singular, explaining, however, the alternation in their use.
I don't mind kicking it here.
Whereby the beast used sometimes
can't beat the scenery.
on other occasions, but too, for its progress. From the tips of the fingers or toes, long rat-like claws extended. The hands or feet were not prehensile, a fact that I ascribed to that long residence in the cave, which, as I before mentioned, seemed evident from the all-pervading and almost unearthly whiteness, so characteristic of the whole anatomy. No tail seemed to be present. The respiration had now grown very feeble, and the guide had drawn his pistol with the evident intent of dispatching the creature.
Oh shit, that
The
sucks.
sudden sound emitted by the latter caused the weapon to fall unused. The sound was of a nature difficult to describe. It was not like the normal note of any known species of simian, and I wonder if this unnatural quality were not the result of a long continued and complete silence, broken by the sensations produced by the advent of the light, a thing which the beast could not have seen since its first entrance into the cave. The sound, which I might feebly attempt to classify as a kind of deep-toned chattering, was faintly continued. All at once, a fleeting spasm of
I know
energy
my
seemed to pass
buddy
through the
showed
frame
me
of the beast.
a couple cool places around here.
Motion, and the limbs contracted. With a jerk, the white body rolled over so that its face was turned in our direction. For a moment I was so struck with horror at the eyes thus revealed that I noted nothing else. They were black, those eyes, deep, jetty black, with hideous contrast to the snow.
Hell yeah, Sasquatch. That's the thing to look for, is stuff like that.
Deeply sunken in their orbits, and were entirely destitute of iris. As I looked more closely, I saw that they were set in a face less prognathous than that of the average ape, and infinitely less hairy. The nose was.
I guess there's my buddy
said
saying there's a lot of mines here too, and in this around this area in upper Michigan. I guess it's like copper mines and another type of ore mine.
Casting weird moving shadows on the walls. I made no motion, but stood rigidly still, my horrified eyes fixed upon the floor ahead. The fear left, and wonder, awe, compassion, and reverence succeeded in its place. For the sounds uttered by the stricken figure that lay stretched out on the limestone had told us the awesome truth. The creature I had
I hope everyone's having a good day
the
and
strange beast of the
staying
unfathomable
safe and
was, or had at one time been,
out there.
a man. End of The Beast in the Cave by H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh shit, that's crazy. Did a guy? What happened?
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.
I'm up in the UP.
Beyond the Wall of Sleep by H.P. Lovecraft. I have
Yeah,
often
but
wondered
in
if
that
the
area,
majority of
Caucasian
mankind ever
Sasquatch.
paused to reflect upon the occasionally titanic
You
significance
boy.
of dreams and of the obscure world to which they belong. Whilst the greater number of our nocturnal visions are perhaps no more than faint and fantastic reflections of our waking experiences, Freud, to the contrary, with his puerile symbolism, there are still a certain remainder whose immundane and ethereal character permit of no ordinary interpretation, and whose vaguely exciting and disquieting effect suggests possible minute glimpses into a sphere of mental existence no less important than physical life, yet separated from that life by an all but impassable barrier. From my experience, I cannot doubt but that man, when lost to terrestrial consciousness, is indeed sojourning in another and uncorporeal life of far different nature from the life we know, and of which only the slightest and most indistinct memories linger after waking.
Well, I did not know that Caucasian Sasquatch. That's pretty cool.
May infer much, yet prove little. We may guess that
I didn't even know there was
matter,
mines up here
vitality,
until my buddy told me, because I saw one of those
are not necessarily
double trailer trucks
and
that I guess comes from a mine with all kinds of different ore.
comprehend them.
Hey,
Sometimes
Babylon Community
this
Watch, how you
material
doing?
life is our truer life,
Hope you're doing well.
and that our vain presence on the terraqueous globe is itself
Appreciate you stopping
a
by.
secondary or merely virtual phenomenon.
Oh, well, there's no one to pass it to.
It was from a youthful reverie filled with speculations of this sort that I arose one afternoon in the winter of 1900 and 1901, when
Cheers.
the state
Hope you're
psychopathic
doing well.
institution in which I served as an intern.
I'm just
was
down here
brought
smoking. Thought I'd do a
case.
quick little live
Has
while
ever since haunted me so unceasingly.
my friend and his wife and kid
Has given
went out and did the
utterance
Mother's Day
to
thing
Joe
for
Slater, or
the family thing for
His
Mother's
appearance
Day.
was that of the typical denizen of the
They could go
Catskill
hiking and a
Mountains,
couple other places.
one of those strange repellent scions of
But I
the
figured that
primitive
we wanted a little family
colonialism
time.
whose isolation for nearly
Plus,
3 centuries in
my
the
back's
early
killing me
thousands
today.
of the little traveled countryside has caused them to sink to a kind of barbaric degeneracy, rather than advance with their more fortunately
All
placed
right.
brother.
If it's a boring place, that means you just haven't looked hard enough to find cool shit.
Among these odd folk, who correspond exactly to the decadent element of white trash in the South, law and morals are non-existent, and their general mental
Yeah, shit, not
status
much
is
stone
woefully
mines.
below that of any other section of Native American people. Joe Slater, who came to the institution in the vigilant custody of 4 state police.
Because I think my buddy said there's the copper mines. I think they mine for cobalt, and I can't remember what else.
Evidence of his perilous disposition when I first beheld him.
That and logging.
Though well above the middle stature, and of somewhat brawny frame, he was given an absurd appearance of harmless stupidity by the pale, sleepy blueness of his small, watery eyes, the scantness of his neglected and never-shaven growth of yellow beard, and the listless drooping of his heavy nether lip. His age was unknown, since among his kind neither family records nor permanent family ties exist. But from the baldness of his head in front, and from the decayed condition
No
of his
shit.
the head surgeon wrote him down as about 40. From the medical,
I go for whichever one would be better on gas. Gas prices are crazy
This
nowadays.
man, a vagabond, hunter, and trapper, had always been strange in the eyes of his primitive associates. He had habitually slept at night beyond the ordinary time, and upon waking would often talk of unknown things in a manner so bizarre as to inspire fear even in the hearts of an unimaginative populace. Not that his form of language was at all unusual.
Well, it's not so much coffee as
in the debased patois of his environment,
some nos.
but the tone and tenor of his utterances were of such mysterious wildness that none might listen without apprehension.
He himself
Not so much
was
morning as
terrified
well. It feels like
of
it's morning
his
here, but
auditors, and within an
yeah, it's
hour
already after
awakening,
1 over here. A
forgot
little bit
all
after
that he had
1.
said, or at least all that had caused him to say what he did, relapsing into
No
a
shit.
bovine, half-amiable normality like that of the other hill dwellers. As Slater grew older, it appeared, his matutinal aberrations had gradually increased
Yeah.
in frequency.
If you hook up
violence.
a heavy ass trailer,
So
then
about a month before his arrival,
it doesn't matter how good they are in gas, because yeah.
caused his arrest by the authorities. One day, near noon, after a profound sleep begun in a whiskey debauch at about 5 of the previous afternoon,
Hell
he
yeah.
roused himself most suddenly, with ululations so horrible and unearthly that they brought several neighbors
With
to
the
his
bathroom.
cabin, a filthy sty where he dwelt with a family as indescribable as himself. Rushing out into the snow, he had flung his arms aloft and commenced a series of leaps directly upward in the air, the while shouting his determination to reach some, quote, big cabin with brightness,
Alright, gotta have a bathroom.
walls and floor, and the loud, queer music far away, unquote. As two men of moderate size sought to restrain him, he had struggled with maniacal force and fury.
Here right now it's just, at least to me, it's a little chilly.
Quote, thing that shines
Hell yeah,
and
Caucasian
shakes
Sasquatch.
and laughs, unquote.
I forgot to ask my buddy what
At
the
length,
smoke was, because
after temporarily
he hooked me up with a little bit of smoke.
with a sudden blow, he had flung himself upon the other in a demoniac ecstasy of bloodthirstiness, shrieking fiendishly that he would, quote, jump high in the air and burn his way through anything that stopped him, unquote. Family and neighbors had now fled in a panic, and when the more courageous of them returned, Slater was gone, leaving behind an unrecognizable pulp-like thing that had been a living man but an hour before. None of the mountaineers had dared to pursue him, and it is likely that they would have welcomed his death from the cold. But when several mornings later they heard his screams from a distant ravine, they realized that he had somehow managed
definitely,
to and that his removal in one way or another would be necessary.
Babylon Community Watch.
Then had followed an armed search
Yeah, it's definitely
whose purpose
a hell of a weather change as far as temperature wise from
after one of the seldom popular
where I live at to where it is over here.
finally joined the seekers.
That's a good question.
Slater was found unconscious in the hollow of a tree and taken to the nearest jail, where alienists from Albany examined him as soon as his senses returned. To them he told a simple story. He had, he said, gone to sleep one afternoon about sundown after drinking much liquor. Taken to find himself standing bloody-handed in the snow before his cabin, the mangled corpse of his neighbor, Peter Slater, at his feet. Horrified, he had taken to the woods in a vague effort to escape from the scene of what must have been his crime. Beyond these things he seemed to know nothing, nor could the expert questioning of his interrogators
Give me 1 second, and I'll be right back.
That night, Slater slept quietly, and the next morning he awakened with no singular feature save a certain alteration of expression. Dr. Barnard, who had been watching the patient, thought he noticed in the pale blue eyes a certain gleam of peculiar quality, and in the flaccid lips an all but imperceptible tightening, as if of intelligent determination. But when questioned, Slater relapsed into the habitual vacancy of the mountaineer, and only reiterated what he had said on the preceding day. On the third morning occurred the first of the man's mental attacks. After some show of uneasiness in sleep, he burst forth into a frenzy so powerful that the combined efforts of 4 men were needed to bind him in a straitjacket. The alienists listened with keen attention to his words, since their curiosity had been aroused to a high pitch by the suggestive, yet mostly conflicting and incoherent stories of his family and neighbors. Slater raved for upward of 15 minutes, babbling in his backwoods dialect of green edifices of light, oceans of space, strange music, and shadowy mountains and valleys.
Yes, that's crazy.
But most of all did he dwell upon some mysterious blazing entity that shook and laughed and mocked at him. This vast, vague personality seemed to have done him a terrible wrong, and to kill it in triumphant revenge was his paramount desire. In order to reach it, he said, he would soar through abysses of emptiness, burning every obstacle that stood in his way. Thus ran his discourse, until with the greatest suddenness he ceased. The fire of madness died from his eyes, and in dull wonder he looked at his questioners and asked why he was bound. Dr. Barnard unbuckled the leather harness and did not restore it till night, when he succeeded in persuading Slater to don it of his own volition, for his own good. The man had now admitted that he sometimes talked queerly, though he knew not why. Within a week, 2 more attacks appeared, but from them the doctors learned little. On the source of Slater's visions they speculated at length, for since he could neither read nor write, and had apparently never heard a legend or fairy tale, his gorgeous imagery was quite inexplicable. That could not come from any knowledge of the man was made especially clear. Simple man. He raved of things he could not understand and could not interpret, things which he claimed to have experienced, but which he could not have learned through any normal or connected narration. The alienists agreed that abnormal dreams were the foundation of the trouble, dreams whose vividness could for a time completely dominate the waking mind of this basically inferior man. With due formality, Slater was tried for murder, acquitted on the ground of insanity, and committed to the institution wherein I held so humble a post.
All right, everyone, probably gonna call into this life for right now. Instead, I got to get on a little earlier and do a quick little one. We might get on a little bit later and do another one. This got to stretch out a little bit because I'm running low on my 3 minutes on StreamYard, so until it rolls over. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by and showing me love and support. You have a good one, Caucasian Sasquatch. Support. Till next time, everyone. You all stay safe out there.